letting go is, for some, the hardest thing to do. We want to worry our cares and frustrations like a dog chewing on a bone. But what does the Bible say? More in line with our lesson series, what can we learn about tending the altar, particularly the altar of our lives? Let's turn to Matthew 5:23. In Matthew 5:23, this is Jesus speaking, Sermon on the Mount. And he says, "Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First, be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift." That's actually 23 and 24. So I want to start with this and kind of take it apart a little bit. So the verse begins, "Therefore." And therefore means accordingly, or and so. So what is he talking about, therefore? Well, let's back up a little bit. If we back all the way up to verse 21, we can kind of get an idea of what's being talked about here. It says, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not murder.' And whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. But I say to you that whosoever is angry with his brother without cause shall be in danger of the judgment." So this starts going to, how do we think? What's really in our heart? And, we talk about people being fake or, putting on an air, putting on appearance. This kind of gets, no pun intended, to the heart of the matter a little bit here. And it says, "And whosoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council, but whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hellfire." That's what comes before the therefore. So that's what he's talking about. Now, in terms of offense, the Sanhedrin had the ability to punish, and punish with the death penalty. And so what he's talking about when he lays those things out is, again, attitude, heart attitude, what you really think. And it talks about really what we would call unwarranted anger, just being angry. And the punishment for that was equivalent to beheading. So you've ever heard the phrase, don't lose your head? Well, this is, if you get angry here, that could have been a result. If you let anger control you, you could literally be beheaded. And then when he talks about whoever says to his brother, Raka, that's really the idea of saying someone is of no consequence. Which is, for the Sanhedrin, would be like contempt. And the punishment for that was stoning. You'd be stoned to death. That's basically contempt. You're holding someone in low self-esteem while thinking of yourself as being maybe of importance. And then it goes on and says, "Whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hellfire." And the idea of you fool is vehement passion, or it's the idea of letting your anger just boil over. And you just, I got mad. I just couldn't hold my tongue. So I said a bunch of stuff I shouldn't have said. And the punishment for that was to be cast out to Guyana. And Guyana was a valley that one of its noted things, one of the things it's noted for was that there were certain kings of Judah that went to that valley in order to sacrifice their children. And in context of what we're reading here, it would be like casting into hell to be, so if you say, you fool, you allow that anger to spill over and just boil over the top. It's the same as being cast into hell. In other words, it's a punishment. It's a death sentence, essentially, to be cast out. But also, I want you to think about this. This is something that God and I were having a little conversation about. The kings of Judah, certain kings of Judah, and Judah is praise. We know that. Certain kings of praise went to this place where they sacrificed their children, where they sacrificed the next generation of praise, where they in other words, they cut off the future. So when we allow our anger to boil over and we say stuff we shouldn't say and we can't hold our tongue, we put ourselves in a place where we damage our future. We damage our children sometimes with words and actions that are beyond what we should exhibit as Christians. And I'm not saying all this to create guilt or have you sitting there, oh, it's hopeless, I'm awful or whatever. That's not it. I just want you to understand kind of what's going on here, and then we can talk about this in context of our series. So, it is all those things that lead up to our key verse here where he begins, therefore. So, according to this, and so, because of all this, if you bring your gift or your sacrifice, and bring here is the idea of tendering to God or giving to God. If you bring your gift to the altar, if you bring your gift, if you offer, if you tender, if you do what you do. So now it's talking about how we live our life even. If you do that, if you bring that, if you tender that to the altar, it's your gift that you're bringing to the altar, your sacrifice that you're bringing to the altar, the sacrifice that you're bringing to the place of sacrifice, the altar being the place of sacrifice. Therefore, and so, if because of this, accordingly, if you tender, offer, do your sacrifice in the place of sacrifice, and there remember your brother has something against you. So let's pause for a minute and look at this for a minute. So as I said, bringing your sacrifice to the place of sacrifice. An altar, you bring your gift to the altar. An altar is not just in the church. It's not just a place in the church. Yes, we can have an altar. Most churches today are laid out very much like this one, in that there's not truly a quote-unquote altar. We have the front stairs to the platform. That's kind of the altar. We have a space here in front of the chairs. That's kind of the place of altar or prayer. Whereas, years ago there would have been a bench or something that literally would have been quote unquote an altar. But again, it's an altar isn't just a place in a building somewhere. We have an altar that's the altar of our heart, if you will. And that's real important for us to understand here because you can pray, you can sacrifice your attitude, you can bring your gift to God. Don't have to necessarily be standing at the front of the church. There's people who bring a sacrifice of praise as they walk in the doors. There's times when people have probably had a pretty good altar in the front seat of their car as they were driving along, when they just poured it out to God. So there's a time in services often to come forward to the quote-unquote altar. I don't want to diminish that at all, but I want you to understand that an altar is not just a place in the church. There's the altar of our heart, which can be tied to our attitudes. And it says, therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you. And this idea of remember is, we all understand the word remember. It's to bring to remembrance. You recall. Oh, yeah. That's recall. But it's also the idea of something that gnaws at you. Like, you come to the altar and you remember, well, like, how could I forget? I mean, it's been gnawing at me for weeks or longer. Or it's in your thoughts. You get to the altar and bring that sacrifice. You're bringing that sacrifice before God, and it's like, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, man, I still haven't resolved that issue with so-and-so. And note, when you read this, it says, and there remember that your brother has something against you. It doesn't just say you have something against your brother. It says, there you remember your brother has something against you. So it's not, well, he did me wrong. It might be, well, he thinks I did him wrong. Right? In other words, that the responsibility for that goes outside of I didn't do anything, but he thinks you did, or he has something he's upset with you about. That's a little different perspective than it's just about whether I'm offended or not. That's saying they're offended. So you bring your gift to the altar, and there you remember your brother has something against you, and it says, and some of the older translations, it says, there you remember your brother has aught against you. So what is it that is coming to remembrance? And I've kind of referred to, doing wronging someone or whatever. But ought literally means anything. In fact, it defines different things, but if you get all done looking at it, what it means is anything. If your brother has anything against you. And I found it interesting that one of the definitions of ought is nothing. So think about that for a minute. If your brother has anything against you, if your brother has nothing against you, he's just upset at you for no reason. So it really kind of covers everything. Ought. Anything, nothing, everything. Kind of all-encompassing. So there's your situation. You come to the altar. You come to the place of sacrifice, a place of sacrifice can also be a point in time. You reach a place where you go, I need to get this right with God. And you bring your gift, and at that point you have a recollection, or you deal with your thoughts, or there's that gnawing at you that this isn't dealt with. It's not about justifying your behavior. Oh, I'm not in the wrong. It's not about that. So that's the point you're at right there, right? You're bringing your sacrifice, and all of a sudden this is on your mind. And I don't think it's strange that would be the case. The Lord will convict us of things. He'll remind us of things in order to help us grow. And at the time we're coming to sacrifice, the time we're trying to be closer to God, is a great time for him to talk to us. Kind of has our attention. So, it says, if you find yourself in that situation, leave your gift there before the altar. Okay. Leave it there. Leave it there, which translates really to forgive. So you come to the altar, you find yourself in that situation, the first thing you need to do is forgive. And then it really says, forgive and leave it where? At the altar. Forgive at that point of sacrifice. In other words, forgive right there. And it says in that statement, leave your gift before the altar. Not only forgive, but it's the idea of reconcile. And we'll look at that a little bit as we go further. It says, leave your gift before the altar and go your way. Go your way. What that translates there is essentially to retire. In other words, it's kind of to bow down and make yourself small. And I don't want to say slink away, but walk away humbly. So you come to the altar, this comes to remembrance, forgive, leave it at the altar, and walk away humbly, meekly, bowed down. And then there's, in my Bible here, there's a period. Some Bibles have a semicolon, but the next thought says, first, above all else, more important than anything else, change. First, be reconciled to your brother. It says, first, change. You came to the altar, came to remembrance, you forgive, humbly, leave it at the altar, and first, change. You say, but I'm not wrong. Well, maybe you're not, but maybe you're not humble. Maybe you're going to be right. Going to be right. More important than anything else, I'm going to be right. And that's not what it says. It says to change your heart in order to bring reconciliation. It says, first be reconciled to your brother. Means I may have to apologize when I don't think I have to. It may mean I have to let something go that I don't want to let go of. I can tell you in counseling married couples and whatnot, that's one of the hardest things is for people to let go of something. Yeah, but I mean, I can understand, but you gotta understand where I'm coming from. I'm really hurt by this, and you gotta understand this, and I'm really upset about this, and I forgive him, but I'm not gonna trust him ever again about this, and I'm never gonna trust him again about that, and I'm gonna bring it up every time we talk or what. No, you haven't left it there. You haven't forgiven. You haven't been humble, and you haven't changed. But that's what it says. Change. First, change. Be reconciled to your brother. And that's an idea of moving towards. Move towards your brother. And it says, and then come and offer your gift. And this word come, as it's used here, is in the context of the idea of growth or grow. First, change, be reconciled to your brother, and then grow. You want to grow in God? Learn to forgive. You want to grow in God? Learn to be humble. You want to grow in God? Learn to bring your sacrifice. And when you do, if there's anything, your fault, his fault, nobody's fault at all, forgive. Change. Leave it there. And then grow. And it says grow and offer your gift. Offer your sacrifice. Offer is tendering again. It's the idea of sacrifice or gift. But it's the same word tender that we had when it said bring. And it's especially to God. So the reconciliation with your brother is a vehicle for your sacrifice to come before God, to be given to God. You can give that sacrifice of my bad attitude. I can give that sacrifice of my anger. I can give the sacrifice of my being right, my pride, my reputation. I can give that especially to God. But it comes after I've been able to go and reconcile. It comes after I've been able to leave it there. It comes after I've been able to forgive and grow. So as we start to look at how this all ties together, leaving it at the altar. We've been talking about tending the altar, and that's a way for us to help bring others to God, to assist in assessing God, to help teach. And so what I would tell you is, in the altar of your heart, if you're gonna tend your altar, you need to do those heart checks. Forgiveness is a really easy heart check to do. It's not a real easy heart check sometimes for us to deal with because we don't want to leave it there. We don't want to be humble. We don't want to change. And we may want to grow, but we don't want to do any of the sacrificing necessary to grow. And what I mean by that is this. When you truly forgive something, it no longer has life. When you truly forgive and give that sacrifice of your rightness or your attitude or whatever it is, and truly forgive and let somebody off the hook, right? When you do that, it doesn't have a life anymore where it barbs you and eats at you. But if you look at a situation with someone or something and it still has that life, it still bothers you in your mind, it still pricks at your heart, well, you need to work on the forgiveness some more because it still has life. And sometimes people get forgive and forget tied up together. Forgiveness, you may not forget what happened, but it doesn't have a life. If you forget about something, all you've really done is stuffed it into a blind spot. It may come back and bother you later out of the blue because it hasn't been forgiven. But when we do bring something to God and we have that recognition, we leave that there and we first forgive right in the moment and leave that right there with God. God, I forgive them. Ask that they would forgive me. I'm going to go and reconcile with them, but God, I don't want anything between you and I. That's tending the altar of our heart. And it's probably really hard when maybe we feel wronged, but they feel that we wronged them. Now we have all the emotion wrapped up in that. Why should I forgive them? They haven't forgiven me, and I didn't even do anything. It's not how it works. Why? Well, if we look at the stuff before the therefore, we come back to the issues of punishment, unwarranted anger. Well, what's that about? That's something you're angry about. You don't have a reason to be angry about it. If I did nothing wrong and you're upset with me and I'm angry because you're upset with me, that's unwarranted anger. It's also kind of stupid because it's probably fairly easily worked out if I have the heart to reconcile it, if I have a heart to want to forgive. Or if I approach this with contempt. Well, I'm the bigger person here. They're just being petty and small. That's contempt for them. That's not forgiveness. It's not bringing it to the altar. It's not growing either, just to be really candid. And then if I'm just letting my emotions run me and I'm out of control emotionally and angry about things, then I haven't I haven't forgiven either. And all of these things under the law of the Sanhedrin were punishable by death. Funny, sin's punishable by death. And yet, Jesus paid the price for all of it. And this is Jesus himself speaking, saying, you need to deal with your heart. My Bible says at the beginning of this passage, murder begins in the heart. The Bible tells us, in I believe John says, as a man thinketh, so shall he be. And I could be wrong on the reference there. But anyway, our thought life controls a lot of who we are. And the Bible also tells us to take every thought captive. Why? Because our thought life controls a lot of who we are. And what we're dealing with here, bringing our sacrifice and something coming in our thought life, in our thoughts, to our mind, and not dealing with it, not going to work, not going to grow. Your sacrifice is not going to be acceptable. Instead, forgive, right? I mean, not do 3 steps and then forgive. It's forgive. Then go and work it out with your brother. So while you're at the point of sacrifice with your gift, forgive. Doesn't say take your gift and go away. Doesn't say take your sacrifice and go away. It says you're there, you have that moment of recognition, forgive. Then leave your gift right there at the altar. Don't take it with you and bring it back. Leave it there. Stay at that point of forgiveness. Then it says, humbly go and change, grow, reconcile with your brother, and come back. Your offering's still waiting right there at the altar. Come back and tender your gift. Give your gift, especially to God. Your gift, your sacrifice, is of your heart, of your attitudes, of your being. If that recognition comes, get it right. Forgive it. Keep that gift of your heart right there before God. When you go get it worked out, come right back to that same spot and then offer your gift to God, not to your brother, not to the local press corps so they can write what a great person you are, but to God. God, I give you the attitude that I had that was wrong. I give you my heart, which hopefully has grown a little and better than when I first brought this to the altar, God. But I give that to you now. I tender that to you now, God. It's a gift, especially to God. That's tending the altar of your heart. That's keeping your heart right before God. That's allowing your heart to be in a way that God can use you, that God can bless you, that you will grow. And you'll grow in God. You'll grow in your walk with God. And it may sound simplistic to you, but so many times it's these little things like this that cause us to trip up, cause us to struggle, cause us to not feel close to God, cause us to be vulnerable to the enemy's accusations. You need to clear the slate, so to speak. Bring it to God. And when you do, and he brings something to your remembrance, right then and there, forgive. Go work it out. Change. It doesn't say change your brother. It says change. It says change you. In other words, change how you're thinking about it. Then come back to God and finish giving him the gift. I would encourage you to take inventory, if you will, of your heart attitudes. Bring a sacrifice to God today. And if he speaks to you about something, follow these steps. Tend that altar of your soul. And watch yourself grow in God grow in relationships, and watch as God blesses you as you give more of yourself to him. And that's it for this week.